The sun was setting beyond the airplane window. Ella leaned closer, gazing at the sky painted in shades of red and gold. She was leaving the cool gray calm of London, heading toward the warm, restless air of the Middle East. Her heart was caught between excitement and unease. In her small notebook, questions were written in neat handwriting. What is reality? What does the face of oppression truly look like? But deep down she knew. The answers wouldn't come from studio lights or scripted debates. They would come from the ground, from people living through it. A voice broke her thoughts. "We are landing at Tel Aviv airport. Please fasten your seatbelts." Ella pulled back from the window, resting her head lightly against the glass. A flicker of panic rose inside her. This was her first assignment in a conflict zone. Her editor's last words echoed in her mind. "Ella, being impartial and not emotional is the rule of journalism." She wondered if she could truly follow that rule. At the airport, Israeli security guards stood watchful and stern. Their eyes moved sharply, never settling. Their tone was cold but measured. "Are you a Christian?" "Yes." "Why are you going to Palestine?" "To report on the humanitarian crisis." She answered calmly, though she could feel their real intent, not just to question her, but to remind her that fear had rules here. The drive toward Gaza was long and quiet. Through the dusty window, Ella saw shattered walls, broken homes, and, between the ruins, the laughter of children trying to play. Her translator, Nadim, spoke softly. "I will go with you only to the border. Inside Gaza, you'll meet a boy named Yousef. He'll help you there." As the car rolled on, the last light of day faded behind the horizon. By the time they reached Gaza, night had fallen. Fewer military jeeps patrolled the streets. Ordinary people filled the roads instead. In one narrow alley, Ella noticed a small boy kneeling beside a broken toy, trying again and again to fix it. The sight struck her more deeply than any news headline ever could. She stayed with a local doctor, a quiet, dignified man in his 50s. His daughter had been killed in a recent bombing, yet he spoke without bitterness. "This is our daily routine, Miss Westwood," he said gently. "We have learned to live with death." That night, Ella stood by the window. Darkness had settled over the city like a heavy blanket. In the distance, the faint call to prayer echoed, from the minaret of a half-destroyed mosque. Despite the ruin, there was peace in that sound, a fragile, glowing peace, like a single light burning in the desert. Suddenly, a deafening explosion echoed in the distance. The window panes rattled violently. Ella screamed, instinctively covering her head. The door swung open. The doctor stepped inside. "Don't worry. This is a normal thing here." Ella's eyes were wide, trembling with shock and disbelief. "A normal thing?" she whispered. He nodded, calm but tired. "Yes, just another explosion. Just another night." Ella sank back into the chair. Her hands were still shaking. The red light on her camera was off, but something had turned on inside her. The explosion outside had faded, but the one within her had only just begun. Dust clung to the window glass. The world beyond was dark, and she could feel it. There was something here no camera could ever capture. A soft knock came at the door. The doctor's voice followed, quiet but steady. "Yousef has arrived." Ella walked to the door, placing her hand on the handle. Before she could turn it, a gentle voice called from outside. "Hello?" The door opened slowly. A thin young man stood before her, his eyes marked by sleeplessness. Not the kind born of restlessness, but of life's relentless grief. In his hand was a torn gray bag, frayed at the edges. "Yousef?" Ella asked softly. "Yes. You are Ms. Ella?" "Just Ella," she replied. He smiled faintly, a smile that never reached his eyes. She motioned for him to come in. He stepped inside quietly and sat on a chair. There was a heavy silence, as if he carried stories too heavy for words. Finally, Ella spoke first. "Do you live with such explosions every day?" Yousef turned his gaze toward the smoky window. "Yes. When the explosions stop, we grow anxious. The silence frightens us more than the noise. A long pause filled the room. Then his voice trembled, breaking through the restraint. My sister, Samra, she was 15. She used to make dolls and give one to every guest who visited. She'd say, "When I grow up, I'll paint the streets of Gaza with color." He swallowed hard. But one day, when I came home from school, I only found half of her body after a drone strike. The other half, maybe the part that had dreams, was gone. Tears filled Ella's eyes. She tried to hide them, but her voice trembled when she finally spoke. The pain in Yousef's words had filled the room, raw and heavy, stronger than any explosion outside. Yousef's voice grew quieter. Father was a laborer, lifting bricks all day. He used to say, "Yousef, get an education so you don't end up like us." His eyes darkened. Then one day, he was buried under a building that had been bombed to the ground. It took us 3 days to dig out his body, and he fell silent. Perhaps the bitterness of tears had risen too high to speak. After a long pause, he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "And my mother," he whispered. She quietly took off her scarf and placed it over my father's face. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stayed silent. And she's still silent, as if her tongue was buried along with him. Ella listened, her head bowed. In that moment, she was no longer a reporter. She was simply a human being. She closed her notebook, turned off the camera. No more recordings, because the truth was already engraved on her heart. Yousef looked up at her, a hint of curiosity in his tired eyes. "And you, why did you come here? What is your pain?" Ella took a deep breath, her gaze drifting toward the window. "I'm of Lebanese origin," she began softly. "My mother was born in Beirut, in a Christian family. But for her, humanity was the true faith." Yousef listened, silent and still. "She used to say, 'We don't find God only in a mosque or a church, but in the act of placing our hand on someone's wound.'" Her voice trembled as she continued. "In 1982, when the Israeli army bombed Beirut, my grandmother's entire neighborhood was buried under rubble. My mother sheltered a wounded Muslim family, only because they were helpless. But a bomb fell on our house too." She paused, her voice breaking. "Later, she said we had paid our debt to humanity. And perhaps that was our forgiveness." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "My mother survived, but most of her family was killed. Years later, she met my father, a journalist from London, and they married. She left Beirut, but her heart never did." Her voice grew quiet. "I used to wonder why she risked her life for a Muslim family. But now, being here, I understand." She looked at Yousef. "Pain has no religion, and tears have no nation." The room fell silent. Moisture shimmered in Yousef's eyes, and a gentle tremor lived in Ella's voice, the kind that only truth can bring. Outside, gunfire echoed again in the night sky. But inside, a different war had ended. A war of ideology, of identity, and perhaps of distance. For the first time, Ella saw a faint light in Yousef's eyes, a fragile spark of hope. "Where do we go tomorrow?" Ella asked softly. Yousef smiled faintly. "To a school that was destroyed in the bombing. Some children still come there to study." because they believe that one day the dust on their books will be cleared. A small smile touched Ella's lips. "Then let's go tomorrow," she said. Yousef nodded gently. "Maybe some words are waiting for us there too." The morning light fell softly over the ruins of Gaza, but with the sun's rays, hope had not returned. It was just another day, like the last, and perhaps like the next. Yousef and Ella walked through the narrow, broken streets until they reached a dilapidated school. The paint had peeled off its doors, and part of the building lay in rubble. Yet, children still came. Quietly, slowly, clutching their books against their chests, their shoes dragging through the dust. There was no laughter on their faces, no spark of mischief, only silence, and a stubborn devotion to learn. A strange ache rose in Ella's heart. As they stepped inside, a man appeared, bent slightly, moving with crutches. His face was dimmed by sorrow, yet lit by an inner flame, like a candle that refused to die in the darkness of war. "Welcome," he said gently. "These are our children, our hope, and our resistance." Ella's hand moved toward her camera, then stopped. Some scenes, she realized, are not captured by the lens, but by the heart. A little girl walked toward them, her steps slow and careful. She couldn't have been more than 7. A torn scarf covered her head. In her small hands, an old notebook and a pen. Her eyes were large, too large, as if they were meant to remember everything the world wished to forget. Yousef spoke softly. "This is Zahra. Her entire family was wiped out in one night of bombing. Only her uncle remains." Ella knelt beside the child. "Zahra, what are you learning here?" The girl clutched her notebook tightly. "I am learning to write," she said, her voice trembling, "so that I can tell everyone that my father used to laugh, my mother used to swing me, and my brothers called me stubborn. Then one day, they all fell asleep, and now there is no one." Her little voice faltered. Then, gathering her courage, she continued, "When I grow up, I will write a book. In it, I'll tell everyone why we were killed. I'll show the world that we died, but we did not stay silent." Ella's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, she was not a reporter, not a foreigner, just a woman, shaken by the truth spoken by an innocent child. Teacher Mahir stepped closer, leaning on his crutch. "Zahra is the life of our school," he said softly. "I can't do much, but I can adorn her with the jewels of education." He tapped his crutch gently against the floor, as if pressing down the pain beneath it. "My left leg was lost in an airstrike," he continued. "That day I was teaching the children how to write words, then suddenly, an explosion. When I opened my eyes, I had only one leg left, and 4 of my students were gone forever." His voice trembled, a mix of pain and patience. "That day I decided, if I can't save their bodies, I will at least give these children the power of words." A deep silence followed. Dust hung in the golden light. Somewhere outside, the faint laughter of children broke through the stillness. And in that fragile sound, Ella felt it. Hope. Small, quiet, but alive. "Because it is not our tradition to answer bullets with bullets," Teacher Mahir said. "Our weapon is knowledge. If we can plant even one word in a child's mind, the world will not be able to lie about us." The children's class began. Zahra wrote slowly on the wall with a piece of chalk. Ella felt, for the first time, a kinship with the little girl, her mother's quiet courage living on in her veins. "Yousef, I will get this girl's book published when she grows up," Ella declared. Yousef smiled gently. "Until then, it is our job to give her words." In Ella's heart, she made a decision. This trip was no longer only reporting. It had become a continuation of her mother's unfulfilled dream. But beneath the city, the other story was being written. The basement smelled of damp and rot. Blackened watermarks ran down the walls, as if the bricks themselves were wounded. This was a place where light was hated, a center where questions ended in silence, and answers were forced from bodies. In the center of the room, a young man hung, bound and bandaged. Traces of electric burns marked his skin. Dried blood stained the bandage at his mouth. An officer sat nearby, lighting a cigarette as if studying a painting. "Is your name Yasser?" the officer asked. There was no reply. Two men moved to a nearby table and clipped wires to the young man's body. Electricity made him convulse. A scream tore from him, a sound the walls seemed to drink in and keep. I asked, "Do you know Yousef?" the officer demanded. Through the bandage, Yasser ground out words. "By God, I am only a student." The officer's patience snapped. "You are all students," he said. "Then you throw stones and accuse us." In another corner, a man's fingers were being crushed with pliers. Someone spoke softly in Hebrew. Another officer laughed. An old prisoner slumped in a shadowed corner, possibly beyond pain, his dignity stripped away. Above this chamber, behind a closed door, officers gathered around a table. A map of Gaza lay spread out. Colonel Shalom pointed with a laser. "This is Beit Hanun," he said. "There are more than 3,000 civilians here, many families with children who throw stones. We must perform a targeted attack here to make the rest afraid." A lieutenant cleared his throat. "What about the international media?" he asked. The colonel laughed as if the question amused him. "Reporters like Ella Westwood? We will limit their access. Any camera that enters Gaza will be controlled by us." Another officer shrugged. "And the school we bombed last year? Children are returning there now." The colonel's face hardened. "Then we create another incident there. One that will spread fear for years." At that moment, another agonized scream rose from below the torture chamber. The colonel did not flinch. He turned to a soldier and said quietly, "If Yasser won't speak, show him a picture of his mother. Tell him she will be next." Outside in the dark corridor, a new prisoner was dragged in. His face was swollen. He had likely been captured the day before. They tied him upside down and struck his knee with a hammer. At the first blow, he shouted. At the second, he fell silent. After the third, he whispered, hoarse and defiant, "Kill me, but you cannot take my words from me." His sentence hung in the air and stilled the room. A soldier sneered and answered, "Words? We'll make you scream, not recite poetry." Then he laughed, a hard, hollow sound. In the dim corner of the chamber, a small window offered a sliver of sky, perhaps the prisoner's last hope. One young man stared at it and thought, "If I survive, I will fight with words. If I die, my silence will still accuse you." Upstairs, the meeting concluded. Maps were rolled away. As Colonel Shalom left, he said only one sentence, low and certain. In the next 24 hours, the sky over Gaza will turn red again. Back at the school, Teacher Mahir continued to teach the children how to write. Zahra traced letters on the board with careful fingers. Ella watched quietly, the chalk lines like fragile lifelines. Suddenly, Yousef's phone vibrated. He stepped outside to answer. Ella followed him into the narrow alley. When Yousef hung up, his face had lost its color. He bowed his head and spoke in a voice that trembled but was steady. An attack is expected. Within the next 24 hours, Beit Hanun, Jabalia, and this school will be targeted. Ella felt her chest tighten. "How did you learn this?" she asked, breathless. Yousef looked at the school behind them, at the children clustered together, at Zahra clutching her old notebook. He did not answer immediately. The truth was heavy and small at once. "We hear things here," he said finally. "Rumors travel fast. People notice who moves and what disappears. Sometimes, the silence before an event is the loudest warning." Ella swallowed. Outside, the wind moved dust across the courtyard. Inside, the children recited letters as if rehearsing the world back into being. For a moment, everything slowed. The chalk, the breath, the small hands tight on books. Time felt like a fragile thread stretched over an abyss. Yousef spoke slowly, his eyes scanning the street. "I received a secret message from an Israeli soldier. He's ashamed of what's happening. He said the decision to attack was made in a high-level meeting." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And one more thing. There's an Israeli army prison near Beersheba. Our young men are being tortured there, in ways that defy humanity." Ella's lips trembled. "Can I go there?" Yousef looked at her in disbelief. "Are you out of your mind?" "That place." Ella interrupted firmly, her voice steady despite the fear. "My mother once said, if you can't face the truth, you have no right to report it." That night, Ella used an old contact tied to her late mother's name, a former UN official. It gave her enough recognition to move under the radar. Through quiet channels, she gained limited access to the prison's outer zone, under the guise of inspecting facilities for a neutral human rights group. Beersheba greeted her with silence, a silence so deep it felt as if even the ground refused to speak. Wearing a plain jacket, a hidden camera stitched into her shirt, she drove in an old van toward the back entrance, pretending to be part of the cleaning staff. The air grew heavier with every step she took inside. The corridor was dim, damp, the smell of metal and blood mixed with disinfectant. On the first floor, she passed a room, a young man tied to a chair, his fingernails being torn one by one. In the second, someone lay naked on the frozen floor as cold water poured over him in intervals. In the third, a young girl, barely 17, was forced to read verses of the Quran aloud while officers mocked her. "Look," one of them said coldly, "even your words can't save you." Ella's body froze. Her hands began to shake. Her throat burned with tears she couldn't let fall. This wasn't just reporting anymore. This was evidence of hell. Suddenly, a guard appeared behind her. His boots echoed sharply on the concrete. "You! What are you doing here? This area is restricted." Ella turned, forcing calm into her voice. "I'm part of the inspection team. I took a wrong turn." She flashed her ID card. The guard's eyes lingered on it for a few seconds too long. Then he nodded. "Go, but don't come here again." He walked behind her as she exited, his shadow trailing hers until the final door. Outside, Ella's breath came out in bursts. She reached the van, shut the door, and turned off the hidden camera. Tears streaked her face, but her eyes were steel. When Yousef saw the footage that night, he was speechless. You brought this?" Ella nodded slowly. "It won't go on air. Not now. This isn't just a story, it's a debt. One that will be paid the day the world is forced to listen." Yousef's voice broke slightly. "Whether we live or not, This video will scream. It will cry. It won't let the truth be buried. The school stood in darkness. Only the soft rustle of papers broke the stillness. Inside, Teacher Mahir leaned on his crutches, pulling school records from a drawer and placing them into old bags. Zahra and a few children sat nearby, quietly packing their notebooks, their little drawings, their memories. The night was calm, but it was the kind of calm that comes before a storm. Yousef stood guard outside while Ella moved quietly through the classrooms, a small flashlight in her hand. She gathered the papers the children had hidden, pages filled with homes, dreams, and the small, fierce marks of suffering. She knew these were more than scribbles. They were testimony. If the children survived, these words would be their identity. If they did not, those same words would scream. Teacher Mahir spoke slowly, each word measured. We have to take the children to a camp near Jabalia. The route must be secret, Yousef nodded. We'll cover the women with cloaks. The children will travel with them, in separate groups, like a migration, like practice. Zahra squeezed Ella's hand, voice barely a whisper. Miss, I won't stop studying, will I? Ella brushed the girl's hair back, tears in her eyes. No, my dear. You're only changing place, not your dream. In the city center, Colonel Shalom's office was tight with papers and control. A folder of Ella's recent photos sat in his hands, images of Palestinian children that had unsettled him. He called Ella in. When she entered, he shut the door and drew the curtain. He did not meet her eyes. We know you went to Beersheba. We know you made that video. Ella's gaze stayed steady. And? The colonel leaned forward, voice low and cold. Ella, you are a good reporter. Some things are meant to be seen with the naked eye, not broadcast. Israel has direct lines into your channel's management. If you air that footage, your career will be finished. Ella's smile was quiet, unafraid. Colonel Shalom, I know where I work. I know how diplomatic my channel can be with your government. But I also know how to release words into the unplugged world. Shalom's jaw tightened. Consider this a polite warning. Only show what fits a picture of all is well. Otherwise, Ella leaned in, the same fire in her eyes that she'd had when she first met Yousef. Her voice was calm but fierce. Otherwise what? Scare me? Kill me? Listen, death would be mercy compared to the torture you have done to those children. The colonel turned away, a tight, silent response. Ella rose. At the door, she paused, quiet and certain. There is footage. There are writings. There are eyewitnesses to every atrocity you hide. When the time comes, the world will see what you veil. She left the room with the same calm she had entered, but inside her resolve burned brighter than fear. That same night, Zahra and the other children were quietly sent through the mountain passes. Teacher Mahir sat in an old jeep, the bag of school records in his hands. The children's writings, now their only voice. Ella stood to one side, clutching the memory card from her camera. It had become her main weapon. Yousef leaned close and whispered, The attack could happen at any moment. You'll have to move too. Ella looked up at the sky, then down at the ground. Now we'll see whose report is preserved in history. At 2:45 a.m., the jeep rocked slowly along the mountain road. The steering wheel was in the hands of a relative of Mahir. Mahir sat beside him, one hand injured, crutches on the back seat. The bag of documents rested on his lap. Ella's eyes scanned the darkness, searching for shadows. Did you hear that? Mahir whispered. Yes, a car, maybe two, Ella replied, calm now, familiar with danger. The jeep turned onto a narrow dirt path winding around the mountains, emerging onto a small oasis trail. Moments later, a white jeep appeared where they had been, lights scanning the road, followed by a hovering combat drone. But their jeep had vanished. Ella signaled to the driver, Stop! Turn off the lights. then to Mahir's aid. "Hand me the bag." Near a dry well, Ella tied the bag with a cloth rope and lowered it carefully inside. They covered the tire tracks with dry soil. Supporting Mahir, they moved him to the basement of an old collapsed church. The roof had caved in, but the underground space was safe. The hum of vehicles returned. Lights flickered across the desert. The drone hovered, then vanished. Perhaps doubt, perhaps disbelief. Either way, they were unseen. Ella exhaled slowly. "We are saved. For now." Mahir laughed, sweat dripping from his body. "This is the first time I've run without crutches, and survived." Ella smiled, tears in her eyes. "Now we move before dawn. We have to reach the mountain camp." They pulled the bag from the well, like a mother lifting her child out of darkness. They stayed in the basement for the rest of the night. Then at first light they set off for the mountain camp. The children and the school staff had already arrived. As soon as they entered, Zahra ran to Ella and hugged her. Ella held her close, as if trying to erase the fear of separation. Teacher Mahir wearily walked among the children. A small boy, missing one eye, climbed into his lap. Tired faces surrounded them. But among the exhaustion, a quiet line of hope was visible. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, Colonel Shalom sat in his office, watching the drone recordings flicker on the screen. A live WGN international broadcast showed Ella reporting from the field. Anger glinted in his eyes as he took a long drag from his cigarette. "If they show our pictures, we will stop their advertising," he said. He called Martin Graves, Ella's senior producer in London.
"If Ella airs that footage, the channel will be blacklisted. You have to stop her." Martin bowed his head, silent.
The next day, Ella received an email. All her field privileges were suspended. The channel declared her a security breach. She closed the email silently, then took a pen and wrote in a small notebook, "If I'm not here, you write in my place." "Zahra, your writing. Maybe it's more truthful than mine." That night, Zahra sat outside Ella's tent, writing carefully in her broken Arabic. "When they come, I'll tell them. We're not just children. We're proof." Ella placed a gentle hand on her head. "You are not a girl. You are a torch, Venus. They will want to burn you, but you will share the light." A curtain of silence lay over the tents of the mountain camp, but behind it, an unspoken restlessness stirred in every heart. Ella sat outside, staring at the stars. She thought of how the greatest stories of the world are often buried in silence. Yet some silences explode when the time comes. Near her, Venus wrote on the ground, her words broken, but fierce with emotion. "We are not just children. We are testimony." Ella looked at her softly. "When the time comes, these words will be more powerful than any weapon." Zahra smiled and nodded, as if she already knew this was her fight, a fight she might carry longer than her own life. Some distance away, Teacher Mahir told stories to the children. His voice was tired, but a spark lingered in his eyes, the kind that comes when children forget fear, even for a moment. Yousef patrolled silently between the tents, keeping his gaze fixed on the horizon. Ella's camera memory card rested safely in a small cloth amulet around his neck. She knew this recording was more than a news story. It was a record that one day could reach the world's courts. But for now, her task was simpler: keep the children alive. Night deepened. The scent of sand drifted through the camp. In the distance, the faint hum of a car broke the stillness. All eyes turned to Yousef. He gestured for quiet and listened. After a tense moment, the sound faded. Teacher Mahir simply nodded. They were safe. For now. At first light, Ella drew back the tent curtains. Children were waking slowly, some in their mother's arms, others lying on their beds, gazing at the sky. Zahra held the paper she had written on through the night and looked up at Ella. "Miss, this is for you." Ella took it carefully. The few sentences on it carried the weight of a child's heart. "If they finish us off, tell the world we never gave up. We just waited for the world to hear." She placed the paper in her bag and made a quiet vow. These words and these pictures would never be buried. Far away in Tel Aviv, Colonel Shalom signed a report. His eyes were cold, determined. He wanted this material buried, hidden at all costs. But he did not know. Stories always find a way. Sometimes they hide in darkness, sometimes in the tattered handwriting of a child. The sun rose over the mountain camp. Children began to play. Women went to fetch water. Yet Ella knew this peace was fragile. There was a strange stillness in the Gaza air that day, as if someone had held back the wind. Shops in Beit Hanun were half open. Children lingered by the roadside. Women filled their containers. At an airbase in Tel Aviv, engines roared to life. Colonel Shalom stood over the map, calm and deliberate. An officer spoke. "The first target is the school in Beit Hanun." Colonel Shalom paused, took a long drag on his cigarette, and spoke slowly. "When a school is destroyed, not only the building collapses. Generations are afraid." Minutes later, the first explosive thunder shattered the air. The school roof crumbled into rubble in an instant. Screams of children pierced the dust-filled neighborhood. Teacher Mahir pulled 2 children from the wreckage with all his strength. But Zahra was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, a second attack struck Jabalia. A bakery, a place of morning bread and warmth, became chaos. The smell of flour turned into the smell of blood. A father held his son's hand, but after the explosion, only the child's shoe remained. The third explosion hit Rafah, targeting a small clinic with medicines and oxygen cylinders. Patients and staff alike were buried under the rubble. Dr. Sabir, the same man Ella had stayed with on her first day, was pulled out, half-breathing, his body battered. Yet his eyes still held determination. Ella captured every scene on her camera. Her heart ached, but her hands did not stop. Yousef held her hand, voice low. "This will put your life in danger." Ella shook her head, voice steady. "My life is only worth it when the world sees it." Back at headquarters, Colonel Shalom reviewed the reports. Target completely destroyed. Number of casualties unclear. He smiled. Fear doesn't develop in a day, but one explosion at a time. What he did not know was that some pictures and a few sentences emerging from the rubble would challenge his entire narrative. Somewhere, Zahra was still breathing. In her hand was the paper Ella had given her. That night, the sky over Gaza lit again with explosions. But this light carried no joy, only fear and mourning. Ella stood outside the tent looking at the rising smoke over the hills. The air smelled of burnt soil, blood, and iron. She understood. This was not just another attack. This was the final stage. When she first arrived, she had been a reporter. Her assignment from London had been clear. Record footage, interview victims, report the story. But when she saw the children's school collapse with her own eyes, when Zahra cried in her arms, when Mahir ran on one leg amidst rubble, she was no longer just a reporter. She became a witness to humanity, a companion to the innocent, determined not to let the truth be buried, even if it cost her life. That night, Yousef appeared, his face streaked with dust and sweat. "Ella, they are going to attack the city's main hospital." A small thump rose in her heart. "Teacher Mahir is there. He is with the wounded children." Yousef nodded. "We have to get them out." They moved through the streets under darkness. Rubble and bodies lay in every turn, but they pressed on. When they reached the hospital, an eerie silence hung in the air, as if time had stopped. Then, a thunderclap tore through the sky. The building shook violently, and in an instant it collapsed into rubble. Amid the dust, Ella called out, "Mahir! Mahir, where are you?" A faint voice replied, "Zahra, where is Zahra?" It was Professor Mahir. They dug through the debris. Their hands were cut, clothes torn. Yet finally, they found him. Dirt covered his face, blood seeped from his side, his breathing shallow. Ella held his head in her lap. "I have put the list of children's names and stories in the bag," Mahir said faintly. "Never lose it. This is their identity." Tears fell from Ella's eyes. "You will stay with us. We will leave." Mahir shook his head slowly. "No. My work is over, Ella. But you are no longer just a reporter. You are our voice. Zahra, don't stop reading." His breath stopped. Ella and Yousef pulled the bag from the wreckage and ran north, away from the city. They heard Colonel Shalom's convoy passing a nearby checkpoint. Yousef's plan unfolded. The local resistance targeted Shalom. Late at night, as the convoy moved along a narrow road, gunfire erupted. Explosions surrounded the vehicle. One blast struck directly beneath it. The car overturned and burst into flames. Shalom fell into the mud, his uniform soaked in blood and grime. An old Palestinian man stood nearby. He looked at Shalom and spoke softly. "These are the cries of the children you took from us." Shalom tried to speak, but smoke and blood drowned his voice. No medals, no honor, just mud and silence. The next morning, the sun rose over the mountain camp. Ella sat with the children. The bag, full of stories and pictures, rested beside her. Zahra wrote in her copy, quietly, determined. "We are not just children. We are living proof." Ella held her hand. "Zahra! This world will definitely hear your voice." Yousef stood nearby, looking up at the sky. "Those who left, their debt is on us." Ella took a deep breath, her voice steady, full of promise. "Now this is not just reporting. This is a promise. I will not stop until the truth reaches every ear." Amidst rubble, tears, and blood, a new story of humanity was born, one that neither bombs nor threats could erase. This story would endure. The dance of death had been stopped, and hope, fragile but alive, would continue.